Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Newsbrowse News broadcast. Senior diplomatic and trade officials from the U.S. and China recently held a series of calls, indicating that a planned summit between President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping is likely to proceed as scheduled. The meeting, anticipated for May 14-15, had faced speculation of delays due to prolonged tensions in the Middle East. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi spoke with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, stressing the importance of leader-level diplomacy and maintaining bilateral stability. Wang also underscored Taiwan as China's core interest and the biggest risk in relations. Separately, Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng engaged in candid and comprehensive economic talks via video with U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, where both sides addressed concerns over trade restrictions. These exchanges, reported by UPI, suggest a path forward for the summit despite ongoing disputes. A recent UPI report, citing U.S. experts including Bruce Bechtel, details that North Korea has been transferring missile technology to Iran for over 40 years. This comprehensive partnership ranges from early Scud missile supplies during the Iran-Iraq War to capabilities approaching intercontinental ballistic missiles. North Korea reportedly assisted Iran in developing and producing various ballistic missiles like the Qiyam, Shahab-3, Imad, Ghadar, and Khorramshahr, which can reach targets across Israel. Furthermore, North Korea transferred advanced rocket boosters and technologies similar to its Hwasong-12 and Hwasong-15 missiles. Beyond missiles, Pyongyang provided military hardware like Yono-class submarines and fast infiltration boats and helped build underground nuclear-related facilities in Iran. This cooperation has generated significant revenue for North Korea, with estimates of $20 billion from transactions with Russia since late 2023 alone. Experts note this proliferation activity contributes significantly to instability in the Middle East, with a potential global economic impact exceeding $1 trillion. According to Liberty Times, U.S. President Donald Trump, speaking at a dinner in West Palm Beach, Florida, on May 1st, hinted that the United States would soon take over Cuba following the conclusion of military operations in the Middle East. On the same day, he had already signed an executive order to broaden sanctions against the Cuban government. During his speech, Trump reportedly singled out a friend from Cuba in the audience, stating, "He's from Cuba, and we, the U.S., will soon take over there." He further emphasized his preference for completing tasks one at a time, saying, "We'll finish one thing first. I like to get things done," which was interpreted as an indirect reference to resolving the ongoing conflict with Iran. Trump also elaborated on a hypothetical scenario, suggesting that upon returning from Iran, the U.S. military might dispatch the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Lincoln, to anchor approximately 100 yards off the Cuban coast, implying that Cuba would then surrender. CBS News reports that President Trump has signed an executive order further tightening U.S. sanctions on Cuba. The new measures broaden penalties against the Cuban government and foreign companies conducting business with it. According to Andy Gomez, a professor of Cuban studies at the University of Miami, these actions carry significant geopolitical implications, serving as a warning to countries like Russia and China to maintain their distance from the island. The order specifically targets Cuban government officials and entities in the energy, defense, and financial services sectors, threatening foreign financial institutions with restricted access to U.S. markets if they continue to engage with Cuban government entities. This move follows months of intense pressure from the Trump administration, which has already impacted Cuba's oil supply. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel has condemned the sanctions as coercive measures. The announcement also coincides with a rare public appearance by former Cuban President Raul Castro, which Gomez believes was a calculated effort to project continued strength. The sanctions also implicitly signal that large-scale migration to the U.S. from Cuba will not be tolerated. South Florida Representative Carlos Gimenez praised the sanctions, stating they are necessary to target its security apparatus and that those who support the regime will face consequences. The decision reinforces long-standing concerns within the Cuban-American community, assuring them that Cuba remains a U.S. priority despite other international conflicts. 联合早报 reports that on Friday, May 1st, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order to increase sanctions on Cuba. The order cited threats to U.S. national security and foreign policy as the reason for the intensified measures. These new sanctions specifically target individuals, entities, and affiliated institutions that support Cuban government security agencies, are involved in corruption, or have committed severe human rights abuses. While a specific list has not yet been announced, the measures include freezing assets in Cuba's energy, defense, mining, and financial sectors, prohibiting transactions between U.S. entities, individuals, and sanctioned parties, and restricting entry to the U.S. for those sanctioned. Foreign financial institutions linked to these entities are also subject to sanctions. In response, Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez took to X, formerly Twitter, to express Cuba's firm opposition. He condemned the U.S. government's new unilateral coercive measures, stating they are an attempt to impose collective punishment on the Cuban people. Rodriguez asserted that the measures violate the United Nations Charter, and the United States has no right to impose such actions on Cuba or any third country or related entities. He defiantly declared, "They won't scare us." On the same day, Cuban citizens demonstrated in the streets, protesting against the long-standing U.S. economic, financial blockade and trade embargo, as well as recent energy restrictions. Trump has previously indicated that Cuba could be next after military actions in Venezuela and Iran. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.